April 24, 1906. A baby boy is born in Brooklyn, New York. He is named William Joyce, but his life will take an unexpected turn that few could imagine. Before long, he will become known by a very different name, Lord Haw-Haw. His mother is English, his father Irish, American. Together, they moved to England in 1921. But the seeds of another life are already being sown, a life that will one day echo across Europe during the darkest days of World War II. Born and raised in America, William Joyce grows up with a complex identity. He moves to England as a teenager, but his roots remain firmly planted on both sides of the Atlantic. As he grows older, William becomes deeply involved in politics, not just any politics, but a brand of extremism that will ultimately align him with the Nazi regime. But how does a young man from Brooklyn come to be known as Lord Haw-Haw? His distinctive voice and sharp wit make him a compelling figure for the Nazi propaganda machine, a tool they will use to spread their message across enemy lines. Yet behind the charismatic broadcast lies a dark truth. William Joyce, Lord Haw-Haw, is not just a voice in the night. He is a propagandist whose words will shape the minds of millions and help fuel one of history's most destructive regimes. But before his story reaches its grim conclusion, let's delve deeper into the world that shaped Lord Haw-Haw, a world where identities can be forged and broken, and where the words of one man can resonate with terrifying power. Settle into this story as we explore how a Brooklyn-born boy came to be one of the most notorious figures in history. By the time we reach the end, you'll understand just how complex and chilling the tale of Lord Haw-Haw truly is. In the coming chapters, we will witness the rise of Lord Haw-Haw and the devastating influence he would have on the world around him. Before we begin, a small request. Most of the people listening tonight aren't subscribed. If this channel has ever helped you drift off, take a moment to subscribe. It's free, it helps this channel more than you'd think, and you can always change your mind later. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love reading them. One more thing before we begin. I'm also a co-founder of a sleep app built to be the most affordable one out there. No ads, ever. Just sounds and stories made to help you sleep. It may not be released yet as this video goes up, but if you're watching a little later, it might be out by now. Have a look in the description below. It works on iPhone, Android, and everything in between. Downloading it is the best way to support this channel. In the mid-1930s, a quiet revolution was stirring in England. It was not the kind that would make headlines, but one that would echo through history nonetheless. Fascism was gaining traction in the shadows. Among those drawn to its allure was a young man named William Joyce. Born in Brooklyn but raised in England, Joyce found himself captivated by the ideals of the British Union of Fascists. The BUF, with its promises of a strong and unified nation, offered a seductive vision. It was this vision that compelled Joyce to join their ranks in the mid-1930s. But as the winds of war began to gather, Joyce saw an opportunity for a more direct role in the movement. In 1939, just before the outbreak of World War II, Joyce made a fateful decision. He fled to Germany, seeking a closer connection to the heart of fascist power. Upon arrival, Joyce found himself immediately welcomed into the fold of Joseph Goebbels' propaganda ministry. Here, Joyce would become an integral part of the machinery that would shape the narrative of the war. Every Sunday night, without fail, a voice echoed across the airwaves from Hamburg to London. It was 1939, and Britain was bracing for war. Across the Channel, in Germany, William Joyce had just become a crucial part of Joseph Goebbels' propaganda machine. His radio program reached England weekly from 1939 to 1945. It was called Germany Calling. On the night of April 30th, 1945, as British troops entered Hamburg and the war drew to its close, Joyce made his final broadcast. This was not just any broadcast. It marked the end of an era. 6 long years of weekly transmissions that had penetrated deep into enemy territory. Imagine a lone voice infiltrating the homes of your enemies every Sunday night, whispering propaganda directly into their ears. It was more than just broadcasts. It was a lifeline of deceit that kept the heart of the German people beating in rhythm with the regime's will. From Hamburg, the voice echoed, "Germany calling, Germany calling." It was a siren song, pulling listeners away from their own shores and towards the enemy's land. This was the power of William Joyce, Lord Haw-Haw, the man who became a voice of war from the other side. But how did such an elaborate deception start? And what would be its ultimate fate? The night of February 27, 1940, was not a calm one for the British public. As the Blitz raged on, German bombs fell across London, shattering homes and lives. Amidst this chaos, a familiar voice echoed through radios. Joyce's eerie presence on the radio was a part of a larger Nazi propaganda campaign aimed at undermining Allied morale. The Nazis controlled all forms of media to ensure their message reached as many British ears as possible. Joyce's broadcasts were designed to sow doubt and fear among the British population, often depicting Allied leaders in a negative light to weaken their authority. "Churchill is leading you blindfolded," Joyce sneered during his February 27 broadcast, mocking the British Prime Minister's reaction to German bombs. As the war drew to its final days, Berlin became a city under siege. German soldiers and civilians alike huddled together in the face of advancing Allied forces. The once powerful Third Reich was crumbling, its cities reduced to rubble by relentless bombing campaigns. In the heart of this devastation, Adolf Hitler had retreated into his bunker, a desperate man clinging to power as the world he sought to dominate slipped through his fingers. VE Day, marking Germany's unconditional surrender, was just days away on May 8, 1945. The once mighty German war machine had been ground down to a halt. Amidst this chaos and impending doom, one voice continued to broadcast from the heart of Germany, a voice that had become both infamous and familiar to British listeners over the years of war. This final broadcast set the stage for Joyce's capture and trial, marking the end of his infamous career as Lord Haw-Haw. The British forces, now in Hamburg, were closing in on Joyce and his propaganda team. As the broadcast ended, Joyce and a small group of others attempted to flee Hamburg, but they were quickly apprehended by British troops. Brought back to Britain, Joyce faced charges of treason for his role in spreading Nazi propaganda. Despite holding a British passport, he claimed American citizenship to avoid prosecution. However, the court denied Joyce's claim, citing his possession of a British passport. This critical ruling set the stage for his treason trial to commence. This marked the start of a complex legal journey that would reveal the profound impact and consequences of Joyce's actions during wartime. The rise and fall of William Joyce, known as Lord Haw-Haw, was marked by a pivotal moment on January 3, 1946. On this day, the executioner's noose tightened around his neck, sealing his fate in a dramatic turn of events. The execution took place at Wandsworth Prison in London. Joyce's final resting place was an unmarked grave within the prison walls, a somber reminder of his controversial legacy. His burial in such a manner reflected the divisive nature of his actions and the strong sentiments held by many who felt betrayed by his allegiance to Nazi Germany. Despite the absence of a marked grave, Joyce's story continues to resonate as a cautionary tale in the annals of history. It serves as a reminder of the power and danger of propaganda during wartime. In retrospect, his execution can be seen as both an act of justice and a moment of reflection on the complexities of loyalty, betrayal, and the enduring influence of propaganda. The quiet settling of his remains within the prison's grounds stands as a poignant symbol of the tumultuous journey of William Joyce, once known to many by the infamous moniker Lord Haw-Haw. As we reflect on his story, it is clear that the legacy of Lord Haw-Haw endures not just in the pages of history, but also as a silent testament to the weight and reach of wartime propaganda. In the quiet of his unmarked grave, one cannot help but consider the lasting impact of words spoken into a microphone, broadcasting across enemy lines in a time of war. Initially popular among British listeners, his broadcasts held a certain fascination. The nickname Lord Haw-Haw was bestowed upon him by the very audience he sought to sway. His programme, Germany Calling, was an eerie counterpoint to the Blitz's thunderous bombardments. In the quiet of night, his aristocratic accent resonated with an unsettling intimacy. Yet as the war wore on, this peculiar allure began to dissipate. With each passing night, his words lost their luster. By the end of the war, he was remembered more for the chilling undertones than any initial charm. In retrospect, his legacy is as much about the power of propaganda as it is about his own personal story. For history, he remains a curious footnote, a man who traded in words that sought to shape the world's most tumultuous events. Propaganda is one of the most potent tools a state can wield, able to shape public opinion and drive political action. Its power lies in its ability to craft a narrative that resonates deeply with its audience, often playing on their emotions and fears. In the hands of the Nazi regime, propaganda became a formidable weapon designed to unify the German people around a single leader and vilify those seen as threats to the state. The Nazis targeted specific groups such as Jews, communists, and the disabled, portraying them as enemies of the state and a threat to German society. This divisive rhetoric was designed to foster a sense of national unity among the German people. Joseph Goebbels, appointed Reich Minister for Propaganda and National Enlightenment on March 13, 1933, was the architect of this propaganda machine. Under his leadership, the Nazi Party produced over 1,000 films between 1933 and 1945, including both feature films and documentaries that echoed the regime's ideologies. These films, along with posters, radio broadcasts, and other media, served to reinforce the narrative of a united Germany led by Adolf Hitler, who was portrayed as the sole leader capable of protecting the nation from its perceived enemies. The impact of this propaganda was profound, shaping public opinion and fueling the regime's aggressive policies. It demonstrated the immense power that well-crafted messaging can have on a populace. As we reflect on this period, it serves as a reminder of the importance of critical thinking and media literacy in today's world, where misinformation can spread just as rapidly and with no less impact. His nasal, haughty sneer and exaggerated poshness are unmistakable, designed to mimic the British upper class. The voice is not just a means of communication, it's a tool of persuasion and manipulation. But how did this voice become so influential? To understand that, we need to look at the context of his broadcasts and the power of sound in wartime communication. During World War II, radio was not just a source of news, but a lifeline connecting people to information and each other. Joyce's voice carried authority and familiarity, making his words seem more personal and thus more persuasive. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit room, the only sound coming from the radio. That's where Lord Haw-Haw reaches his audience. His voice becomes a constant presence, a reassuring and yet unsettling companion during uncertain times. His distinctive voice, with its exaggerated poshness and nasal sneer, creates an atmosphere that is at once familiar and alienating. It's this duality that makes his broadcast so effective in spreading propaganda. As the echoes of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts fade into history, they leave behind a legacy that has been meticulously preserved. The BBC monitoring service diligently recorded and transcribed each transmission, ensuring that every word uttered by this infamous propagandist would be remembered. The medium-wave station Reichssender Hamburg was the conduit through which Lord Haw-Haw's words reached their intended audience. This powerful radio transmitter ensured that his distinctive voice, with its exaggerated poshness and nasal sneer, could pierce through the night. Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts were not merely heard, they were recorded and transcribed, creating a tangible record of his propaganda efforts. These transcriptions provide a chilling insight into the methods used to spread disinformation and sow doubt among the British public. The broadcasts continued night after night, reaching their climax during the Blitzkrieg. The eerie familiarity of Lord Haw-Haw's voice, coupled with his threats and mockery, made each transmission a haunting reminder of the war raging outside. The last words uttered by Lord Haw-Haw over the Reichssender Hamburg station echoed through the airwaves, marking a symbolic end to an era of propaganda. Despite his efforts to demoralize and divide, history has preserved these broadcasts as a testament to the resilience of truth. Today, These transcriptions serve as a somber reminder of the power of words and the dangers of misinformation. They stand as an important historical record, offering insights into both the tactics used by the Nazis and the resolve of those who sought to resist them. The echoes of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts continue to resonate, not as a threat, but as a lesson. They remind us of the importance of vigilance in the face of disinformation and the enduring power of truth. The chilling effect was palpable. As nights grew darker and longer, the words of Lord Haw-Haw cast a pallor over British households. Fear crept in, not just of bombs, but of the invisible enemy within. His voice, laced with sarcasm and contempt, became a familiar and unwelcome presence in the silent hours. It echoed in the empty spaces of homes where loved ones had gone to fight. The enduring influence and fear that his propaganda evoked serve as a stark reminder of the power of words. They serve as a testament to the enduring impact of disinformation and the unyielding pursuit of truth. Before the outbreak of World War II, a political movement was brewing in Britain. It went by many names: the British Union of Fascists, or simply BUF, but it was part of a broader, global fascist tide that swept through Europe in the 1930s. In the years leading up to the war, Joyce became involved in the BUF and quickly rose through its ranks. The organisation was led by Sir Oswald Mosley, a former member of the British Parliament. The BUF advocated for policies inspired by Italian and German fascism, including anti-Semitism and support for a strong central government. His early political activities and affiliations with the BUF laid the groundwork for his future role as a broadcaster of Nazi propaganda during World War II. By understanding Joyce's early political activities and his rise within the BUF, we can better appreciate how he came to align himself with Nazi Germany. As the 1930s progressed and Europe edged closer to war, Joyce's political views and affiliations would lead him to a fateful decision that would forever alter his life. But for now, let's explore the early years of this intriguing figure and see how he became a pivotal part of a movement that sought to reshape Britain. But by the late 1930s, things began to change for Joyce. In Britain, there was a growing concern about far-right movements and their influence. The British Union of Fascists, BUF, which Joyce had joined, was banned by the government in 1934. This move was a significant blow to Joyce and other members of the BUF, as it effectively silenced their political activities in Britain. In spite of this setback, Joyce remained steadfast in his beliefs and continued to promote fascist ideals. However, his activities did not go unnoticed by the authorities. Joyce was arrested in 1936 on charges of sedition and for his involvement with the BUF. During his trial, Joyce delivered a passionate speech in defense of fascism, but it was to no avail. He was found guilty and sentenced to 9 months in prison. While incarcerated, Joyce's commitment to fascism did not waver. Upon his release, he realized that Britain was no longer a viable place for him to pursue his political goals. It became clear that he would need to find another venue where he could freely espouse his beliefs. Thus, in 1939, Joyce made the fateful decision to leave Britain and travel to Germany. This journey marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that would eventually lead him to become known as Lord Haw-Haw. Under Goebbels' guidance, Joyce was moulded into the persona of Lord Haw-Haw. His broadcasts evolved to include sarcasm and mockery of British fears, all designed to undermine Allied morale. But for all his influence, he remained a tool in the hands of those who crafted his message. The evolution of Lord Haw-Haw from a mere voice to a symbol of Nazi propaganda reveals the power of calculated manipulation. And so, the making of Lord Haw-Haw stands as a stark reminder of how propaganda can shape and twist perceptions. As the war drew to a close, the chilling voice of Lord Haw-Haw would fade into silence, but the lessons from his rise remain. Britain listened, transfixed. In the dim of blackout nights, Lord Haw-Haw's voice resonated, carrying tales of Germany's unstoppable might and Britain's inevitable doom. The broadcast sparked a mix of fear and fascination, leaving many British households tuning in night after night to hear more. Meanwhile, the government recognized the insidious power of propaganda. Measures were swiftly implemented to counteract Joyce's influence, including disrupting transmissions and monitoring broadcasts for misinformation. The BBC also stepped up its efforts to deliver balanced news, aiming to restore public confidence. But the impact on Britain was profound. Many Britons began questioning their own leaders and the war effort. The once revered Winston Churchill was often mocked in Joyce's broadcasts, eroding public trust. As the war progressed and the Allies started turning the tide, the tone of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts shifted. From confident boasts to desperate pleas, he tried to maintain his audience's morale, but many were losing faith. In the end, the propaganda campaign that once captivated Britain faded into silence, along with Joyce's chilling voice. The lessons from his rise and fall are stark reminders of the potency of propaganda and the resilience of a nation under siege. Cairns, who held strong political views, played a significant role in shaping Joyce's ideologies. Her support and encouragement bolstered his resolve to spread Nazi propaganda. Their shared commitment to fascism was the bedrock of their marriage. Despite their staunch beliefs, the Joyce family lived with the constant threat of capture by Allied forces. This looming danger added a layer of tension to their already intense political existence. As Joyce faced trial for treason, the personal stakes were high not just for him, but also for his family. Their lives had been intricately tied to his political beliefs and actions. The consequences of his choices echoed through their private world. One of Joyce's key techniques was the use of false identities. He often posed as an anonymous British broadcaster, lending his messages a sense of credibility and intimacy that resonated with his listeners. The psychological impact on listeners was profound. Joyce's ability to mimic British accents and understand the cultural nuances of his audience made his broadcasts all the more insidious. Through his broadcasts, Joyce not only attempted to demoralize British citizens, but also aimed to disrupt their trust in their leadership and the war effort. The story of Lord Haw-Haw highlights the effectiveness of black propaganda during wartime, showcasing how even a lone voice can spread disinformation that echoes far beyond its source. In the end, Joyce's actions left a lasting impact on both sides of the war, demonstrating the power and peril of using falsehoods to shape public perception. In response to Joyce's propaganda efforts, British intelligence took swift and strategic measures. The first line of defence was jamming the broadcasts to disrupt the transmission signals from reaching British listeners. However, Joyce's distinct voice and unique delivery made his broadcasts particularly resistant to simple jamming techniques. In light of this challenge, MI5 and MI6 worked on developing counter-propaganda to directly address Joyce's falsehoods. These agencies deployed a team of experts who crafted messages that could effectively counteract the fear-mongering tactics employed by Joyce. Their strategy involved using reliable information and reassuring tones to bolster morale among British listeners. This approach aimed to foster a sense of unity and resilience against the divisive narratives being pushed by Lord Haw-Haw. British intelligence also closely monitored Joyce's broadcasts for any potential revelations about German strategy or troop movements. Their vigilance enabled them to anticipate and prepare against possible threats that Joyce might have hinted at in his broadcasts. Ultimately, the efforts of MI5 and MI6 played a crucial role in maintaining public morale and ensuring that Joyce's propaganda had limited impact. Their work illustrated the strategic measures taken to combat Nazi propaganda and protect British resilience during a time of significant turmoil. In the aftermath, intelligence agencies sought to understand how such propaganda could be so effective and how similar techniques might be employed or countered in future conflicts. Joyce's broadcasts were seen as a significant case study for post-war propaganda strategies. One of the key lessons learned from Lord Haw-Haw was the power of misinformation and its ability to sow doubt and fear among a population. This tactic would later be employed in Cold War propaganda, where disinformation campaigns aimed to undermine the confidence of citizens in their governments. Moreover, Joyce's use of mockery and sarcasm to belittle Allied leaders like Winston Churchill was seen as a potent psychological weapon. This approach would be adopted in subsequent propaganda efforts, notably in the Cold War, where both sides sought to undermine their adversaries through ridicule. In the Cold War era, governments increasingly recognized the value of targeted messaging to specific demographics. The US and Soviet Union both developed sophisticated propaganda campaigns aimed at various groups within their respective societies and beyond. The lessons learned from Joyce's broadcasts also extended to the evolution of radio and broadcast technology. As radio became a more ubiquitous medium, governments saw its potential for spreading ideology and influencing public opinion on a global scale. In conclusion, the rise and fall of Lord Haw-Haw left an enduring legacy in the realm of propaganda strategies. His broadcasts not only highlighted the power of misinformation, but also demonstrated the importance of understanding and countering psychological warfare techniques. The impact of his methods continues to be felt in modern propaganda, where the ability to tailor messages and exploit cultural nuances remains a critical component of influence campaigns. As Lord Haw-Haw's voice echoed through Europe, the impact of his propaganda rippled across the Atlantic, reaching American listeners. The influence of Joyce's broadcasts on US audiences was notable, with his distinctive tone and mocking rhetoric finding a foothold in the minds of many. Joyce's broadcasts, originally intended for British audiences, were transmitted with enough power to cross the Atlantic and be picked up by American radios. This unintended reach allowed his messages to infiltrate US homes, where listeners became unwitting targets of Nazi propaganda. In a broadcast on February 27, 1940, Joyce sneered at Churchill's warnings about German bombs, dismissing them as mere scare tactics. This mockery had the unintended effect of undermining American confidence in their allies' assessments of the war situation. The echoes of Joyce's propaganda could be felt not just in homes, but also in public spaces, where people would gather around radios to listen to the latest news and broadcasts. His distinctive voice and sarcastic remarks became an eerie soundtrack to the anxieties of wartime America. To reach the shores of Britain, Joyce's broadcast needed to traverse thousands of miles. This was achieved through the use of powerful long-wave transmitters, which could send signals over vast distances with minimal interference. The transmitter at Reichsender Hamburg was one such device, capable of projecting his voice across the English Channel and beyond. The technical challenges were significant. Atmospheric conditions could distort or weaken the signal, making it difficult for British listeners to tune in clearly. To mitigate this, Joyce and his team employed advanced engineering techniques, constantly monitoring and adjusting the transmission power and frequency. As World War II progressed, the technological landscape shifted. Allied forces began employing counter-propaganda techniques, using their own radio signals to disrupt and jam Nazi transmissions. Despite these challenges, Joyce continued his broadcasts, adapting to new conditions with resilience. The technical aspects of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts provided a glimpse into the intricate machinery that supported his propaganda efforts. Behind the infamous voice and mocking tone lay a complex interplay of technology and human resilience, all working together to spread the Nazi message across war-torn Europe. In the end, the technological aspects behind Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts underscored the power and reach of radio technology during a time of global conflict. His voice, amplified through advanced engineering, had become a haunting presence in the lives of Britons, embodying both the fear and the resilience of wartime Europe. Goebbels, recognizing the potential of English-language broadcasts to sow discontent among British listeners, lent his support to Joyce's efforts. He saw Joyce as a valuable asset for disseminating propaganda and undermining Allied morale. Joyce, however, was not the only English voice used by the Nazis to reach British audiences. Mildred Gillars, known as Axis Sally, was another broadcaster who gained prominence during this time. Unlike Joyce, she targeted American troops with her broadcasts. The interactions between Joyce and other broadcasters like Gillars offer a glimpse into the dynamics within the Nazi propaganda machine. While their work was coordinated by Goebbels' propaganda ministry, there is little evidence to suggest direct collaboration between them. The contrast in their fates reflects the complex dynamics within the Nazi propaganda machine. While they both played significant roles, their individual experiences highlight the varying fortunes that could befall those entangled in the web of wartime propaganda. In the end, Joyce's relationship with other Nazi propagandists sheds light on the organizational structure and dynamics within Goebbels' propaganda machine. Despite operating under the same banner, their experiences were as varied as they were influential. As the war escalated, neutral countries found themselves inexorably drawn into its orbit. His distinctive voice and cutting commentary reached homes across Europe and beyond, leaving an indelible mark on public opinion. In Ireland, the emergency was declared in response to Joyce's inflammatory broadcasts. Similarly, in Spain, Joyce's taunts about the vulnerability of cities like Barcelona and Madrid resonated deeply. The reactions ranged from anger to outright panic, underscoring the potency of his rhetoric. His broadcasts also reached Switzerland, where they were met with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The effect of Joyce's propaganda was so profound that even in the relative safety of Switzerland, people began to question their neutrality. It's a testament to the far-reaching influence of his voice that even in neutral countries, many found themselves swayed by his words. His broadcast demonstrated the power of propaganda to infiltrate even the most isolated communities. Through his microphone at Reichsende Hamburg, Joyce's voice echoed around the world, shaping public opinion in ways that would forever alter global dynamics. The legacy of his broadcasts serves as a stark reminder of the enduring impact of effective propaganda. As we continue to explore the complexities of World War II, the influence of voices like Lord Haw-Haw's offers invaluable insights into the human dimension of conflict. Joyce understood the power of local dialects. When addressing French or Dutch listeners, he switched effortlessly to their language and accent. This wasn't a simple trick of mimicry, it was a deliberate strategy designed to create intimacy and authenticity. By speaking in the local tongue, Joyce made his messages feel personal and immediate, as if he were a neighbor whispering secrets into the ear of each listener. The emotional impact was profound. French listeners reported feelings of betrayal and unease, as if a trusted friend had suddenly turned against them. Dutch audiences, likewise, felt a deep sense of disquiet, wondering if the very airwaves they relied on could be trusted. Joyce's mockery was another potent weapon in his arsenal. He mocked European leaders with such scorn that listeners began to doubt their own judgments. He would ridicule the Allied war efforts, exaggerating setbacks and dismissing victories as mere flukes. The psychological toll was significant. European morale, already fragile under the strain of war, became even more precarious as Joyce's words echoed through their homes. His broadcasts, designed to demoralize and disorient, succeeded in creating a climate of fear and uncertainty that was felt across the continent. The reach of Lord Haw-Haw's propaganda went beyond geographical borders. It penetrated deep into the psyche of those who heard it. By understanding the full scope and impact of Joyce's broadcasts, we gain a deeper appreciation for the multifaceted nature of warfare. His methods were not just about military strategy, but also about manipulating emotions and perceptions on a massive scale. As Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts resonated through the airwaves, their impact within Germany was complex and multifaceted. While many Germans tuned into his propaganda, there were those who resisted his messages. The German resistance, a collective of underground groups opposed to the Nazi regime, saw Joyce's broadcasts as a threat to their efforts to undermine Hitler's control. Joyce's distinctive voice and aristocratic accent were not lost on the German populace. His exaggerated tone, mocking British fears of German bombs, often elicited reactions from those opposed to the regime. Civilians within Germany who were against the Nazi regime found Joyce's tactics of fear-mongering and mockery to be particularly insidious. Some members of the German resistance even went so far as to subvert Joyce's propaganda by disseminating their own counter-messages through clandestine means. These counter-messages aimed to expose the lies in Joyce's broadcasts and remind Germans of the true nature of Nazi rule. Despite these efforts, Lord Haw-Haw's influence remained significant within Germany. His ability to manipulate emotions and perceptions on a massive scale posed a formidable challenge to those trying to resist the regime's propaganda. This complex interplay between Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts and the German resistance provides insights into the multifaceted nature of his impact within Germany itself. As the war progressed, the content of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts evolved to match the changing dynamics on the ground. Early in the conflict, his broadcasts focused heavily on mocking the British government and their responses to German bombs. In particular, his attacks on Winston Churchill were a staple of these early transmissions. As the war progressed and German forces made inroads into Europe, Joyce's broadcasts began to highlight Germany's military victories. These changes reflected the strategic shifts within Nazi propaganda, which aimed to boost morale and sow doubt among the Allies. Joyce's distinctive voice, with its exaggerated aristocratic accent, became a familiar and unsettling presence for many British listeners. The eerie quality of his broadcasts contributed to their impact and made them a significant part of the psychological warfare against Britain. In later stages of the war, Joyce's broadcasts adapted to target different audiences, including those in occupied territories. Themes of German superiority and the inevitable victory of Nazi ideology became more prominent as the war reached its climax. However, as German forces began to falter and the tide of the war turned against them, Joyce's broadcasts took on a more desperate tone. This dynamic evolution in content underscores the adaptive and multifaceted nature of Joyce's role as a propagandist. One example of his manipulative use of historical events is his broadcast during the early stages of the war, when he referred to the German invasion of Denmark and Norway as a decisive victory. He exaggerated the success of this operation, painting it as a strategic masterstroke that demonstrated Germany's military prowess. This narrative was designed to boost morale among German listeners and instill fear in Allied populations, who were made to believe that their forces stood no chance against the might of the Third Reich. Another instance was his coverage of the Blitzkrieg tactic during the invasion of France, Belgium, and the Netherlands in May 1940. Joyce described these swift, devastating assaults as unstoppable, portraying them as evidence of Germany's superior military strategy and technology. This manipulation of historical events had a significant impact on various audiences. For Germans, it bolstered their sense of national pride and invincibility. For the Allies, it created an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear, as they grappled with the possibility of being overpowered by a seemingly unstoppable force. While Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts were designed to undermine Allied morale, his impact on the German public was no less significant. His exaggerated aristocratic accent and nasal sneer made him instantly recognizable to German listeners. Though his voice was initially a source of amusement, it soon became a comforting presence during the war. Germans tuned in nightly to hear his updates and reassurances. In fact, some Germans even reported feeling more patriotic after listening to his broadcasts. However, not all Germans were enamored with Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts. Those who recognized the truth behind his words often felt a sense of disillusionment and betrayal. This internal resistance highlighted the complex nature of his influence on the German public. Regardless of the mixed reception, Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts played a pivotal role in shaping Germany's wartime narrative. His voice became a symbol of both comfort and manipulation, demonstrating the broader impact of his propaganda. Goebbels, the architect of Nazi propaganda, saw immense potential in Joyce's ability to broadcast his messages directly into British homes. Joyce was granted airtime on Reichssender Hamburg, a major broadcasting station. Within the Nazi hierarchy, Joyce's role was significant yet complex. He was not part of the inner circle, but his broadcasts reached millions, making him a valuable asset. Goebbels personally oversaw Joyce's scripts, ensuring they aligned with the party's messages and goals. This high level of control underscored the importance the Nazis placed on his broadcasts. Yet, Joyce's British origins and outsider status within the Nazi Party led to some friction. There were whispers of discontent from high-ranking officials who viewed his position with suspicion. Despite these tensions, Joyce's broadcast continued to be a staple in Nazi propaganda efforts. His ability to reach British listeners was too valuable to ignore. After the war, Joyce's capture and trial highlighted his dual allegiances and the complexities of his role within the Nazi hierarchy. By February 1940, the Nazi blitzkrieg had swept across Europe, leaving much of it under German control. This new reality brought unique challenges to resistance movements in countries like France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Despite his attempts to demoralize these populations, Joyce's broadcasts often had the opposite effect. They served as a rallying cry for resistance movements, unifying people against the common enemy. The geographical scope of Joyce's propaganda became evident as his broadcasts reached into the heart of occupied territories, demonstrating the far-reaching influence of Nazi propaganda. Post-war analysis revealed that his propaganda had lasting psychological effects on listeners. Historians noted that the eerie presence of his voice created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty among British citizens. The tone of mockery and sarcasm used by Joyce to attack Winston Churchill and other Allied leaders left a deep-seated distrust among some listeners. Psychological studies found that the constant threat of German bombs portrayed in his broadcasts caused widespread anxiety and sleepless nights. For decades after the war, Joyce's distinctive voice remained etched in the memories of those who had listened to his broadcasts. In the years that followed, the British public's reaction to Joyce's broadcasts became a case study in psychological warfare. The fear and uncertainty sown by his words underscored the potency of propaganda in shaping public opinion during times of crisis. Joyce's broadcasts served as a stark reminder that even the most menacing voices could find an audience during wartime. The lasting implications of his work highlighted the delicate balance between information and disinformation in shaping public perception. The use of British slang in William Joyce's broadcasts was a shrewd tactic that made his propaganda resonate deeply with listeners. He understood that familiarity could forge a connection, and he used it expertly to undermine Allied morale. Transcripts of his broadcasts reveal phrases like "keep your hair on" and "get a move on," which were sprinkled into his messages to give them an air of authenticity. He might say something like, "The British are all in a tizzy about our bombs, but you know what? They're just ticking time bombs waiting to go off." This approach had the effect of making his propaganda feel more immediate and personal, like a conversation with someone familiar rather than a distant, authoritarian voice. By speaking in the language of the people, Joyce managed to create an illusion of intimacy that made his messages all the more persuasive. He was not simply a broadcaster, but a manipulator who understood that the most effective propaganda is often the one that sounds like it's coming from someone you know. And in doing so, Joyce demonstrated how cultural familiarity can be a powerful tool in the delicate balance between information and disinformation. Joyce's distinctive voice was already familiar to many Britons from his earlier broadcasts. His nasal, haughty sneer and exaggerated poshness made him an easy target for caricature. Joyce claimed that the German Luftwaffe was overwhelming British defences and that victory was imminent. Yet despite Joyce's efforts, the RAF held firm and eventually turned the tide of the battle. His broadcasts, once a comforting presence for some, became a mocking soundtrack to the Blitz as German bombs rained down on British cities. The Battle of Britain illustrated how real-time events could be manipulated for propaganda purposes. Listeners wrote letters to Joyce, often addressing him as "Dear Haw-Haw." These missives range from expressions of admiration to queries about the war's progress and even requests for advice. Joyce, in turn, responded to these letters, sometimes reading them aloud during his broadcasts. This personal touch created an illusion of direct communication between the broadcaster and his audience. The perceived intimacy was a strategic tool used by Joyce to make his propaganda more palatable and persuasive. By appearing approachable, he could manipulate the emotions of those listening to him. This relationship between a propagandist and his audience demonstrated how personal touches can be used effectively in mass communication to influence public opinion. The intimacy created by Joyce's responses was not merely a gimmick, it played on the human desire for connection, especially during times of uncertainty and isolation. Joyce's skill in crafting this illusion highlights how propaganda can be made more potent by appealing to basic human emotions. As the war progressed, Joyce continued to exploit this dynamic, using it as a powerful tool in his ongoing propaganda campaign. This strategy showcased how a personal touch can humanize even the most hostile of messages, making them more compelling and harder to dismiss. Ultimately, the relationship between Lord Haw-Haw and his listeners underscores the importance of understanding the psychological tactics employed in wartime propaganda. It's 1940 as the sun sets over London. The city falls into darkness, not by choice, but out of necessity. The blackout is in full effect, a response to the fear of German bombs. It's an eerie sight, once bustling streets now shrouded in near total darkness, with only the occasional faint glow from dimmed windows. Joyce capitalizes on the British anxiety surrounding these blackouts. His broadcasts mock the fear of German bombs, painting a picture of Britain in chaos and despair. He taunts the British people, claiming that their efforts to hide from the Luftwaffe are futile. "You can't hide from us," he sneers. The impact of these broadcasts on British morale is significant. They amplify the anxiety and fear already present in the population. Joyce's distinctive voice and exaggerated poshness make his broadcasts all the more unsettling. He uses these blackouts as a potent tool in his propaganda arsenal, turning ordinary situations into symbols of British vulnerability and German dominance. This tactic shows how seemingly mundane aspects of everyday life can be twisted and weaponized to spread fear and uncertainty. In the end, it's not just about the bombs, it's about controlling the narrative and instilling fear. Goebbels, recognizing Joyce's potential for propaganda, offered him a platform to spread Nazi ideology. Goebbels' support ensured that Joyce had access to high-quality equipment and a powerful broadcast range, amplifying his impact on British listeners. Goebbels' influence and resources were pivotal in shaping Joyce's propaganda efforts, making Lord Haw-Haw a powerful voice in Nazi ideology. The Nazi propaganda ministry under Joseph Goebbels invested heavily in advanced radio technology to ensure their messages reached far and wide. One of the key players in this effort was Karl Ritter, a skilled engineer who developed powerful transmitters that could be heard across Europe and beyond. The Reichssender Hamburg radio station became a crucial hub for broadcasting Nazi propaganda, including Joyce's infamous Lord Haw-Haw program. Under the control of Goebbels, this station operated with state-of-the-art equipment that ensured their messages were clear and far-reaching. The technology allowed Joyce's distinctive voice to be heard clearly, even amid the static of wartime communications. By leveraging these advanced technologies, Joyce was able to mock British fears of German bombs and spread his propaganda effectively. He had help from British defectors, individuals who chose to side with the Nazi regime and assisted in spreading propaganda. One notable defector was Peter Fairweather, a member of the British Union of Fascists. He joined Joyce's broadcast team and contributed to the content by sharing his insights into British culture. Fairweather's contributions were significant because they allowed the propaganda to feel more authentic and resonate with British listeners. Another important defector was John Ameri, who became known for his passionate support of Nazi ideologies. He delivered speeches in German-occupied territories, including France and the Netherlands. Ameri's speeches were often broadcast back to Britain, aiming to demoralize the British population by highlighting Nazi victories. The role of these defectors in Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts was crucial. They provided an insider perspective that added credibility and bite to the propaganda. However, their efforts also had a human cost. Many of these defectors were eventually captured and faced severe consequences for their actions. Their stories offer a glimpse into the complexities of wartime allegiances and the enduring impact of their choices. The presence of British defectors in Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts was a sobering reminder of how propaganda can exploit internal divides to undermine morale during times of conflict. Joyce's early political activities were met with significant opposition from within Britain. Despite the growing resistance to his pro-fascist views, Joyce continued his political activism. His unwavering commitment to fascism eventually led him to leave Britain in 1939. This period of pre-war activism set the stage for Joyce's role in spreading Nazi propaganda during the war. As we explore his wartime broadcasts, it becomes clear how his pre-war experiences shaped the message he would later convey. As we delve deeper into the technical evolution of William Joyce's broadcasts, it's important to understand how advancements in radio technology and his adaptations as a broadcaster maintained their impact on listeners throughout the war. Initially, Joyce's broadcasts were limited by the crude technology of the time, but as the war progressed, improvements in radio equipment allowed for clearer and more powerful transmissions. But it wasn't just technology that changed. Joyce himself evolved as a broadcaster. Early on, his broadcasts were often rambling and disjointed, but as the war wore on, he became more polished and focused in his delivery. His ability to mimic British accents and use sarcasm became sharper, and he honed his skill in mocking British leaders like Winston Churchill. This evolution was crucial because it allowed him to maintain his impact on listeners even as the Allies grew more resilient. Throughout it all, the combination of technological improvements and Joyce's adaptations ensured that his voice remained a haunting reminder of Germany's presence. This technical evolution underscores how Joyce's broadcasts were not static, but rather a dynamic force that adapted to maintain their chilling effect on listeners. As we continue exploring the impact of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts, it becomes clear how his messages resonated deeply within the psyche of the British people. But even after Joyce's execution in 1946, his influence did not fade away. His legacy lived on, particularly among post-war fascist groups who saw him as a martyr for their cause. Joyce's broadcasts had a profound effect on the British public, tapping into deeply held fears and insecurities. His voice became a familiar, if chilling, presence in households across Britain during wartime. The seductive power of his rhetoric lingered long after the war ended, shaping the ideologies of many post-war fascist groups. These groups often invoke Joyce's name and broadcasts as examples of the struggle against the establishment, cementing his status as a symbol of resistance. Moreover, his execution by hanging added to the martyr-like aura surrounding him. It is this enduring influence that underscores how Joyce's actions had lasting effects on British political movements long after his death. Even today, debates continue about the true extent of Joyce's influence and whether he should be remembered as a traitor or a complex figure in British history. These discussions highlight the ongoing relevance of his broadcasts and the enduring impact they had on the collective consciousness of a nation. Broadcasting from Germany during World War II, Joyce's voice became a chilling presence in the homes of British troops and their families. His distinctively nasal, haughty tone was hard to ignore. His words were not merely insults, they were part of a psychological war aimed at undermining the resolve of the Allied forces. The psychological impact was profound, as soldiers began to question their own bravery and the effectiveness of their defences. The psychological manipulation did not go unnoticed. There are instances where the broadcasts influence military decisions and operations. The mockery and exaggerations created an atmosphere of uncertainty, which could affect strategic planning. For example, Joyce's constant belittling of the British response to the Blitz might have contributed to a shift in morale, making soldiers more hesitant or less confident in their defensive measures. In one of his broadcasts, he compared the British response to the Blitz with that of the Spanish Armada in 1588. While the comparison seemed to highlight British resilience, it was twisted to underscore the futility of resistance against Germany's military might. By selectively choosing historical events and twisting their narratives, Joyce aimed to sow doubt and fear among the British population. The psychological impact was significant, as listeners might question whether their current efforts would be enough. For instance, Joyce often referred to Winston Churchill as a weak and ineffective leader, portraying him as a modern-day version of Neville Chamberlain. This mischaracterization was aimed at undermining British morale and support for the war effort. The use of such historical references was not just rhetorical flair, but a strategic move to make Nazi propaganda more relatable and impactful. By connecting current events with familiar historical narratives, Joyce made his propaganda more digestible and psychologically potent. The irony, however, was that despite Joyce's attempts to undermine British morale, the country ultimately emerged stronger and more united in its resolve against the Axis powers. Perhaps the most significant takeaway from Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts is not just his skillful use of historical references, but also the resilience and determination of the British people in the face of adversity. Joyce's ability to manipulate history for strategic gain highlights a broader truth about the power of propaganda and the importance of historical literacy. Joyce's messages were not just received, but actively sought out and internalized by many in Germany. His broadcasts from Hamburg became a sort of lifeline for Germans, offering a sense of control and victory over the adversities they faced. However, as the war drew on and the situation in Germany worsened, even Joyce's skilled propaganda could not entirely mask the grim reality. Despite his best efforts to buoy spirits, the strain of war became increasingly evident in German morale. This dual role of Joyce spreading propaganda, both to demoralize enemies and to bolster German resolve, highlights the complex nature of wartime communication. The Battle of Berlin, which began on April 16, 1945, marked the final and decisive stage of World War II. It was here that the fate of Nazi Germany would be sealed. The significance of these messages lies not only in their content, but also in the context of Nazi Germany's waning power. As German cities lay in ruins and defeat became increasingly inevitable, Joyce's propaganda attempted to bolster a desperate resolve. Despite his efforts, the tide of war was turning decisively against Germany. The Allied advance into Berlin signaled the end of the Third Reich's reign of terror and the crumbling of their propaganda machine. The pivotal role of propaganda, even in these final stages, highlights its insidious power to shape public sentiment and maintain a facade of strength, even as defeat loomed large. Beyond the immediate military context, his propaganda seeped into various aspects of European society and culture. Literature, music, and art were all subtly influenced by the pervasive presence of Nazi ideology. Authors and writers found themselves grappling with themes of deception and manipulation in their work, often mirroring the propaganda techniques employed by Joyce. Composers and musicians similarly responded to the war's propaganda, incorporating elements of tension and dissonance into their compositions as a reflection of the cultural unease. Artists began to explore themes of resistance and subversion in their work, using visual imagery to challenge the propagandistic narratives that were being forced upon them. This cultural impact extended beyond the war itself, shaping post-war European society and its artistic expressions for decades to come. The legacy of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts underscores the far-reaching influence of propaganda, highlighting how it permeates not just military strategy, but also the broader cultural fabric of a society. This impact serves as a stark reminder of the insidious power of propaganda to shape not only public sentiment, but also the very essence of human expression. The eerie presence of his broadcasts was unsettling. Civilians, huddled around their radios late at night, found themselves drawn into Joyce's rhetoric. His sarcasm and mockery resonated, making the threat of German bombs feel imminent. Accounts from the time recall how his words seeped into daily life, altering perceptions and heightening anxieties. A sense of helplessness gripped many as they grappled with the reality that enemy propaganda could be so potent. The impact was profound, demonstrating how effectively propaganda could reach and influence the home front. The echoes of Joyce's voice served as a stark reminder that even in the safety of their homes, Britons were not immune to the psychological warfare waged by the Nazis. His broadcasts, tailored to the occupied countries, sought to undermine morale and trust in Allied efforts. Joyce mocked British fears of German bombs, portraying the Allies as weak and ineffective. This tactic aimed to sow doubt and fear among civilians, making them question their leaders' capabilities. Resistance groups in these occupied territories were aware of Joyce's influence and worked to counter his messages. Some underground movements used their own broadcasts to debunk Joyce's claims and bolster local morale. the psychological impact of Lord Haw-Haw's broadcasts on civilian populations was substantial. Civilians in occupied territories faced a barrage of propaganda designed to erode their resolve and loyalty to the Allied cause. In the turbulent years leading up to World War II, William Joyce, an outspoken British fascist, found himself increasingly marginalised in his home country. His fiery speeches and pro-Nazi sentiments had earned him both fervent supporters and vocal detractors within the British Union of Fascists, BUF. As the political climate grew more hostile toward his beliefs, Joyce realised that continuing his activism in Britain would be futile. Seeking refuge and a platform to spread his ideology, Joyce made the fateful decision to escape to Nazi Germany. This choice was not without his supporters within the BUF, who saw in Hitler's regime an opportunity for fascist ideas to flourish. With assistance from fellow British fascists, Joyce embarked on his journey across the English Channel. The exact route and details of this clandestine escape remain shrouded in history, but what is clear is that Joyce's departure marked a turning point in his life and career. Joyce's fluency in the nuances of British life allowed him to craft propaganda messages that resonated deeply with his intended audience back home. This unique ability would prove crucial as he assumed his infamous persona, Lord Haw-Haw. His escape to Germany set the stage for a broadcasting career that would become one of the most notorious propaganda tools during World War II. One diary entry from October 1940 reads, "The radio crackles to life, and there he is again, Lord Haw-Haw, laughing at our fears. The children are scared to go outside after his broadcasts." This glimpse into daily life highlights the granular influence Joyce had on civilians' psychological state, as their once calm evenings were now punctuated by fear and anxiety. To counteract this, the government intensified its own broadcasts, focusing on messages of resilience and unity. In a letter to his sister, a soldier stationed in London wrote, "They say Churchill is doing all he can, but we need more than words. We need to see action." This underscores the public's growing desire for tangible reassurances amidst Joyce's demoralising broadcasts. Government responses were not solely limited to words. Physical measures were also taken. Air raid shelters became a common sight, offering some respite from the psychological onslaught. A letter from a mother in London described her children's fear subsiding as they spent nights in their shelter. "It's cramped and dark, but at least we feel safer here." Yet, Joyce's propaganda continued to chip away at morale. His exaggerated claims of German military prowess created an atmosphere of doubt and vulnerability. A diary entry from December 1942 notes, "Lord Haw-Haw says, 'We are defeated already. How can we believe otherwise?'" This sentiment highlights the propagandist's ability to plant seeds of despair in civilian minds. In response, the government rolled out campaigns emphasizing collective strength and community support. Posters with slogans like "Keep calm and carry on" were plastered across cities, aiming to instill a sense of shared purpose and fortitude among civilians. Despite these efforts, Joyce's broadcasts maintained their hold on the public imagination. His distinctive voice became a haunting presence in British homes, symbolising the ever-present threat of Nazi aggression. Letters from civilians described the eerie atmosphere created by his transmissions. "The night is silent, except for that nasal drawl sneering at us." As the war progressed, the government stepped up its measures to counteract Joyce's propaganda, implementing more frequent and varied broadcasts aimed at bolstering morale. Churchill himself addressed the nation in May 1945, saying, "We will not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end." This message was received with renewed hope and determination by the public. Joyce's broadcasts were peppered with British slang and colloquialisms that made him seem familiar to his listeners. He'd say things like, "Cheerio chaps, just wanted to let you know that we're still here and we mean business." This use of common British phrases created a sense of intimacy. These jokes weren't just funny, they were a potent tool for propaganda. By using humour and familiar references, Joyce made his listeners feel at ease with him. This illusion of familiarity allowed him to spread Nazi ideologies under the guise of friendly banter. He'd often mimic Winston Churchill's voice and delivery, twisting the Prime Minister's words to fit his propaganda. One broadcast featured Joyce saying, "We'll fight on the beaches, we'll fight on the landing grounds, and if necessary, we'll even fight in the BBC studios." This ability to adapt British cultural elements into his broadcasts was a key part of Joyce's propaganda strategy. His deep understanding of British humour and culture was a potent tool for spreading Nazi messages,